Hello, my beautifully burdened storm catchers, those who carry scars like secret weapons and wear silence like armor. You see, there's something deliciously ironic about the ones who dig your grave with shaking hands, only to fall into it themselves, screaming your name. They thought you were weak because you walked away, because you didn't fight back with the same rabid chaos they vomited. But they missed the point. They mistook your restraint for absence. Your quiet wasn't surrender. It was the sound of judgment, ripening in the dark. They tried to bury you with whispers, lies dressed in concern, smiles sharpened at the edges. They orchestrated your downfall like a symphony, each false story, each cold shoulder, each backhanded compliment, a string in their grand opera of control. And oh, how proud they were, like children who believe they've outsmarted the storm because they danced in the rain. But the storm was never out there. It was always you. You didn't ruin them. No, that's the best part. They ruined themselves trying to ruin you. That's the trick of chaos. It doesn't knock. It waits, watches, and when the hand that strikes you lowers its guard, it snaps like a mirror under pressure. They were so obsessed with writing your ending that they forgot to finish their own story. And now, they're stuck, trapped in a loop of their own bitterness, choking on the ashes of the fire they lit. They saw your silence as defeat. They didn't know silence is a scalpel. They didn't realize ignoring their games was the deadliest move of all. Because you weren't playing to win. You were letting them lose, on their own terms, in their own time, with their own weapons. Let's speak of masks, shall we? The masks they wear to feel powerful, adored, untouchable. The way they craft personas like prison cells, trapping themselves in expectations they'll never meet. You were the glitch in their system, the reminder that not everyone bows to their illusions, that someone out there walks without chains, and that terrified them. So they did what all cowards do when faced with something real. They tried to smear it, dilute it, break it. They couldn't understand you, so they labeled you threat, problem, narcissist, cold. But what you really were was free. And freedom. Oh, that's a threat to those who live behind fences of their own making. You see, when people try to destroy you, it's never about you. It's about the mirror you hold up, the reflection they can't stand to see. Because you don't flinch, you don't beg, you don't need them, and that makes them irrelevant. And irrelevance, that's a death they can't swallow. They underestimated the storm because it smiled. Every insult they threw, it taught you precision. Every rumor taught you patience. Every betrayal rewired your boundaries. They thought they were weakening you, but they were forging you. Every piece of pain, polished steel now. Every scar, a symbol. Every loss, fuel. Now they watch, bitter, bewildered, burning, because you rose. Not with noise, not with vengeance, but with elegance. With that dangerous kind of poise that only comes from having seen too much and survived anyway. You haunt them, not because you hurt them, but because you didn't need to. Your growth, that was the punishment. You were the calm in their chaos, and they were chaos in your calm. They'll never admit it, but they envy the way you endured. The way you didn't break loud, the way your silence felt like thunder wrapped in velvet. They called it ego, but it was focus. They called it distance, but it was peace. They called it revenge, but you were just done. They crafted war, expecting screams, but all they got was stillness. And that stillness, it echoed louder than any retaliation ever could. Because real power doesn't shout. It watches, waits, and when it moves like fate. Let's not forget how they exposed themselves. That's the most poetic part, isn't it? You didn't have to expose them, they did it for you. With every overstep, every lie, every desperate attempt to pull you back into the narrative. They showed their fear, because the truth isn't that you changed, it's that you outgrew the cage they built for you. The world watched you disappear into yourself and feared you'd never return. But return you did. Not as who you were, but as what you were always becoming. Not the prey, but the predator of illusions, a storm in skin. Now they can't sleep, not because you haunt them, but because your silence does. You became what they never expected, undeniable, and they became footnotes in a chapter they thought they authored. And now you're no longer reacting, you're designing, calculated, composed, cold in the way only someone warm for too long can become. You've turned the page, you've changed the ink. You are the architect now. Let them scramble. Let them rewrite history in group chats and whispers. Let them twist timelines and invent intentions. It won't matter, because deep down, even they know they tried to ruin you. And in the process, they unraveled themselves. And you didn't just survive. You became the storm they swore they could handle. But the storm didn't need to rage. It didn't need thunder. It just needed to arrive. Quiet, calculated, the kind that moves in shadows, devours in silence, and leaves no room for denial. You see, when they realized you weren't coming back to the same script, panic became their native tongue. Their rehearsed smiles cracked. Their networks of whispers turned into shrieks, and every ounce of power they borrowed from your ruin began slipping through their trembling fingers. Because you weren't playing the old game anymore, you'd become the game. The board, the pieces, the rules, rewritten. They were still trying to summon a version of you that no longer existed, still casting spells on a ghost, while you, the architect, designed an entirely new reality they couldn't comprehend. They threw rocks at the sky and wondered why the stars didn't dim. Let's not pretend they don't miss you, not the real you, but the you they thought they could bend, the version of you that flinched, over-explained, apologized for existing. That version is dead. You buried it without ceremony, in silence so deep it frightened the vultures. And now, they're still circling, but the feast they crave is long gone. They can't reach you, not because you're distant, but because they're too small for the altitude you've claimed. Their narratives don't stick anymore. Their words, once weapons, now fall flat like dead birds. They want your reaction. They crave your downfall like addicts is hunting a high that no longer exists. Because you shifted the power by removing your attention. And attention, my Stormcatcher, is currency. Once you stop spending it on chaos, the circus collapses. The clowns scatter. The ringmaster chokes on silence. That's the brilliance of your transformation. It wasn't explosive. It was surgical. You began speaking in absence, and absence, it screams in frequencies only guilt can hear. Now every move you make is a mirror to their mistakes. Every step forward forces them to reflect on the holes they dug. And oh, how poetic it is, watching them dance in the quicksand of their own bitterness, blaming gravity while ignoring the weight of their own deception. You've become myth to them. A shadow, a symbol, not because you sought revenge, but because you became uncatchable, and people hate what they can't touch, hate what they can't label, hate what refuses to bleed on cue. You're not just surviving, you're thriving in a frequency their souls can't decode. You've ascended past performance, past validation, past the need to be seen. And that's what drives them mad. That your rise wasn't loud, that you didn't announce your evolution, that you simply became. They throw jabs at the air now, hoping you'll walk back into the arena. But why would a god revisit the ruins of a stage? You didn't ruin them. No, again, that credit belongs solely to their own reflection. You just existed authentically, and in doing so, you revealed how false their worlds were. You didn't bring them down. They leaned on walls made of glass and wondered why everything shattered when you stopped holding it up. Let's revisit their motives, shall we? They never wanted you to fail. Not really. They wanted you to need them, to orbit their sun, to bow to their fragile egos disguised as confidence. They wanted control, not connection, worship, not witness. And when you denied them that, they crumbled. You left them with a silence they weren't prepared to sit in, a version of themselves they had no distraction from, because you were the excuse, the scapegoat, the projection screen. Without you, they had to face the rot, the hollow, the truth. And here's the cruelty of truth. It doesn't scream, it doesn't knock, it just exists, like a slow drip from a cracked ceiling, until the whole room floods and nobody remembers how the leak began. They played chess with mirrors, mistaking reflections for real opponents. You weren't fighting. You were observing, taking notes, calculating. Every betrayal, a page, every insult, an annotation. They were so loud with their sabotage, they didn't notice you were building a kingdom with every brick they threw. You gave them the rope, and they tied their own noose. You see, some people don't want peace. They want control disguised as harmony. And when you chose inner peace over external approval, they saw it as defiance, because your evolution meant their delusions were dying. Let them stew. Let them choke on the silence that used to terrify you, because now, that silence is your fortress. They thought your downfall would be loud, public, a spectacle. But your rise? It's been quiet, precise, divine, and that unsettles them more than any scream ever could. Because pain they can handle, but power wrapped in stillness, that terrifies them. They wanted the last word, but you gave them the last echo. You became everything they tried to convince the world you weren't, and now they scramble to rewrite the script as you burn the stage they thought you'd die on. Let them panic. Let them spiral in group chats, decoding your silence, crafting theories, praying for a misstep, because you've stepped out of their frequency, out of their reach. And no amount of noise can summon someone who no longer exists in their realm. You aren't hiding. You're simply beyond their comprehension. They'll say you changed, but that's the point. Growth offends the stagnant. Healing terrifies the infected. And your peace? It exposes their wounds, so now they wear the bruises of their own projections. They accuse you of becoming cold, not knowing it was their fire that forged your frost. Let them watch. Let them rot in the echoes of their own venom. Because you're not here to correct their narratives. You're here to live in truth so loud, their lies collapse under its weight. And the best part, you never had to scream. You just had to stop whispering. But let's go deeper now. Deeper into the halls of their own design, the ones they built to trap you in shame, yet find themselves now locked water within. Their guilt is no longer a ghost. It's a roommate. Every time they breathe, they feel you. Not your presence, but your evolution. And that stings worse than any confrontation ever could. Because the new you doesn't look back, doesn't hesitate, doesn't explain. You don't play defense anymore. You move in strategy. You exist in intent. You smile without seeking approval. Speak without editing your truth. And walk as if the fire behind you isn't chasing you, but propelling you. And they can't stand it. Because somewhere deep down, they know the truth they won't say out loud. They needed you more than you ever needed them. You were the current in their still waters, the pulse in their hollowed routines. The one that saw through the performance and called it what it was. That scares people. The ones who hide behind masks made of borrowed confidence and stitched together identities. They fear the eye that sees through the veil, so now they keep tabs from afar. Watching, wondering, waiting for a crack in your stride. But it doesn't come, because this version of you, it isn't performance, it's essence. You stopped reacting, you started becoming. And every day that becoming writes a truth they can't rewrite, a sentence they can't erase. A truth so undeniable, even the lies feel ashamed standing beside it. So let the next chapter be written not in revenge, but in rhythm. Let your rise be the storm they whisper about, but can never measure. Because you didn't just survive them, you transcended them. And that's where the story doesn't end, but transforms. Because transcending isn't escape, it's elevation. It's not running from the fire, it's becoming it. You didn't climb a ladder. They did not build one for you. You erupted from beneath, from within, from the ashes they left you in. And now, they cough on the smoke of a blaze they sparked, but could never tame. You see, they tried to define you, tried to stitch your image into their tapestry of half-truths and controlled narratives. But how do you contain something made of contradiction, chaos, and clarity? They couldn't box what refuses to take shape, couldn't bury what knows how to become soil, couldn't kill what doesn't fear death. You're not their memory, you're their omen. They tried to wound you publicly, hoping the echo would fracture your spirit. But pain didn't silence you. It sharpened you, made your voice cut through the fog like prophecy. Their betrayals didn't cage you. They created a map. Every scar, a constellation guiding you toward rebirth. They taught you how to bleed without breaking, how to walk away without a trace, but leave footprints in their minds. Now they tremble, not because you fight, but because you don't. Because you've gone beyond proving, beyond defending. You are the still flame, the unmoved mountain, the thing they can't shake with all their noise and noisemakers. You turned your destruction into doctrine, and they read it every day. In the silence, after their messages go unanswered. In the hollowness of a room where your energy once anchored gravity. In the bitter taste of comparison, when they see your growth and feel their own stagnation rot beneath the skin. They curse your name in private, toast to your downfall in circles built on shared delusion. But at night, in the quiet, they remember your eyes, not the color, the clarity, the way you looked at them, not through them, but into them, past their filters, past their facades, into that raw, frightened version of themselves they keep buried. And that, more than anything, is what they fear. The way you saw them. Now you've become memory and myth, an echo that refuses to die down, not haunting them with rage or revenge, but with reality, the one they tried to rewrite. But truth, like time, has no patience for lies. It wraps around them like a slow fog, revealing all they tried to erase. And standing tall in that unveiling is you, the one they tried to mock, the one they said was too much, too intense, too emotional, too blunt, too ambitious, too everything they couldn't understand or control. You, the one they whispered about when they thought you weren't listening. You, the one who heard it all and kept walking. Because power, real power, isn't in retaliation, it's in resurrection. And your rise wasn't a show, it was sacred, the way you learned to grow without applause, to heal without witnesses, to become without permission. That is what unsettles them, that you didn't just come back stronger, you came back silent. And that silence said everything. You don't need them to see it. You don't need the world to clap. Because the applause of the shallow can never measure the depth of your evolution. You didn't escape the fire. You became the forge. Now they follow shadows, hoping to catch your echo. They mimic your language, your path, your power, trying to recreate the rise they never earned. But imitation never births essence. They want your outcomes without your pain, your presence without your process. They want your light, but forget it came from burning. Let them keep watching. Let them choke on their spineless narratives. Let them build new lies from the ashes of the old. Because you've stepped into a realm where their voices can't reach. You've become too loud in your silence, too real in your stillness, too vast in your truth. They can't touch you anymore. Not because you're protected, but because you're transformed. You've stopped needing closure from the architects of confusion. You stopped asking questions to mouths that only knew manipulation. You stopped bleeding in front of people who applauded the wound. And that decision, that choice, that's what ended their control. They only had power when you played along, but you broke the board, you burned the game. And now they stare into the space where your chaos used to be and call it emptiness. But it's not empty, it's peace. And it terrifies them. Peace doesn't need to announce itself. It doesn't rush. It doesn't seek permission. It arrives. And when it does, everything untrue falls apart. So let it fall. Let the old world crumble. Let the characters you once loved reveal the masks they always wore. Let every whispered insult, every backhanded compliment, every smile with sharpened teeth collapse into dust. Because you don't need revenge. You are the result. You are the answer to every version of you that wondered if you were too much. You are the closure to every page that ended in silence. You are the ending and the evolution. And for those who tried to write you off, let them read. Let them read you in the way your presence has rewritten their reality. Let them feel the weight of their own absence in the room you now dominate. Let them sit in the dark corners of the timeline they tried to erase you from and realize you were never the villain. You were the warning, and now you walk with no chains, no echoes of the past trying to pull you under. You walk as the aftermath, as the calm that comes after the storm no one thought would pass. You got so many people pressed under the weight of their own guilt, their own projections, their own choices. The ones who tried to ruin you didn't realize they were setting a trap they'd fall into themselves. Every twist they planned became a knot in their own story. Every dagger thrown became a mirror. And every mirror reflected you standing tall. Not broken, not bitter, just untouchable. So walk without apology, without fear, without hesitation. Walk knowing that your very existence challenges everything they tried to destroy. Walk like the flame they failed to snuff out, like the storm they couldn't bottle, like the truth they'll never silence. Because this is the part they never saw coming. You didn't just survive their chaos, you learned to dance in it. And now, you lead. The ones who laughed, watch you in silence, the ones who doubted, copy you in secret, the ones who betrayed, hide from the echo of your name. Because the final laugh, it was never a sound, it was a presence. And you became unforgettable.